So today I'm going to be doing my best friend's makeup. This is Courtney. Her and I have been best friends for literally 15 years, since kindergarten, and she recently came to Minnesota to visit me, so I thought that this would be the perfect time to film a video with her in it, and we both really love the look. It's really nice, like warm, orangey brown halo eye on the lid, and a really nice green shimmer on the lower lash line and waterline. And yeah, so if you want to see how to achieve this look, then please just keep on watching. First started with the Mario Bedescu oil-free moisturizer, and I just applied this to her face to give it some moisture. Her and I have a very similar skin texture. We both have combination to oily skin, so while this worked for me, I figured it would also work for her as well. I wanted to give her some dewy skin, so I went in with the Becca Backlight priming filter, and I applied that to her face. This is definitely my favorite primer at the moment, and I know that she really enjoyed it too. She really liked the glow that it gave her. So I mixed two foundations together. I used the MAC Face and Body in N1 and the MAC Studio Fix Fluid in NW10, and I just applied that to her face and blended it with the Real Techniques sponge. To conceal any under eye circles and any discoloration, I use the Benefit Erase Paste, and I use the lightest shade, and I just apply that with my ring finger, and then I blended it with the Real Techniques sponge. To conceal any blemishes, I use the MAC Conceal and Correct Palette in Light, and I use the shade NW20, and I just applied the concealer with a concealer brush, and then I blended it out with my Real Techniques sponge. To set the under eyes, I went in with the Coty Airspun face powder. This is in translucent extra coverage, I believe, and I just blended that underneath her eyes to prevent any creasing, and while it is supposed to be translucent, it actually looks pretty dark on me, but on her skin tone, it matched pretty well. I also actually applied the powder anywhere that I felt that her face would get oily throughout the day. So just like the center of her forehead, her upper lip, her chin, and her nose, although I'm not quite sure why I powdered her nose because her nose is pretty dry that day. So then I did Courtney's eyebrows, and I used the Anastasia Brow Wiz in medium brown and the L'Oreal Brow Stylist Plumper in medium dark, and I just brushed through them with a spoolie, and then I just used the Brow Wiz to define them and deepen them and sharpen them a little bit. I didn't want to go too crazy or too dramatic like my own eyebrows, and I know that my hair is sort of in the way pretty much through half of this video. I apologize, but you know, it happens. With the L'Oreal Brow Plumper, I just went in and brushed her eyebrow hairs back, and I brushed the front ones sort of upwards just to make them look more natural. Then I primed her eyelids, and I used the MAC Paintpot in Painterly to do so, and I just applied this with my fingertips onto her eyelids all the way up to her brow bone. To set the base, I used the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in the shade Chamois Nude, and I just applied this all over her eyelid up to the brow bone with a big fluffy brush. So I used a couple different eyeshadows in her crease and the inner and outer corners of her lid. The first one that I used was the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in the shade Persian Peach, and I just applied this into the crease and I buffed it out, and I also applied this into the inner and outer corners of her lid. Then I went in with one of my favorite eyeshadows of all time. This is the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in the shade Pumpkin Pie, and as you can see, we're having a really good time. It was hard for her to close her eyes because she was laughing so hard because I'm just so hilarious, right? But I just applied this into the crease and the inner and outer corners because I was starting to build up a halo eye because I'm obsessed with halo eyes for some reason. Then I went in with the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in the shade Oatmeal Tan, and I again just applied this to the inner and outer corners of her lid and slightly into the crease. And I also did this on the lower lash line as well, although I'm not really sure why I did that because I ended up doing something else anyway, so just ignore that. Then I went in with the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in the shade Oktoberfest, which is a really nice warm orangey brown, and I applied this again to the inner and outer corners, just sort of making that blend smaller each time, if you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. And I applied this into the crease, but only ever so slightly, just because I really wanted to focus that depth in the inner and outer corners of her lids. Then I went in with the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in Chocolatier. It is a really nice, rich chocolate brown, but it's very subtle. It's not as dark as I thought it would be, which was actually a pretty good thing in this look. I again just applied this to the inner and outer corners and slightly into the crease. Again, I really only wanted to focus that depth in those corners. Then for the center of the lid, I used the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in Copper Pot, and I applied this with a very small brush to the center of the lid. I really didn't want this to be too extreme of a halo eye. I just sort of wanted it to be like a nice, subtle, neutral look with a hint of shimmer, and it was, and she loved it. This is where I ended up doing something completely different with the bottom lash line. I used the Maybelline Master Smokey pencil in Emerald Fury, and I applied this to the waterline and the lower lash line, and I, again, just don't know why I applied those neutral shades to the lower lash line when I knew for a fact that this is what I was going to be doing from the start. Then, with a small fluffy brush, I went in with the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in the shade Forest Eve, which was the green that I was pointing to, not the blue, and I used that to blend out that Emerald Fury eyeliner. Then, just to add a bit more definition to the lower lashes, I used the Coastal Scents eyeshadow in Pinehurst, and I just applied that to the lash line, really tightly hugging the lashes. I didn't want the entire lower lash line to be that Pinehurst shade. I just went back and forth between a couple different brushes to further blend out that lower lash line. This is the one that I used to apply Forest E with, and this is the one that I used to apply Pumpkin Pie with, and I again just used that to further blend out that lower lash line. And then for mascara, I used the Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara because honestly I don't know what else I would be using. And she did not want me to curl her eyelashes, which was fine because her eyelashes were ridiculously defined and curly without them. And I know that my head is in this shot. I am so sorry. I don't know what to do about that, okay? God. Then, to contour, I used the NYX blush in the shade Taupe, and I applied this underneath the cheekbones to sculpt them and also along the jawline as well. Then to bronze up her face and really warm it up, I use the Too Faced Milk Chocolate Soleil Bronzer, which is my favorite. It smells delicious, and I just applied this pretty much right over the contour shade, and then I also apply this to the temples and the forehead as well. And then for a little bit of blush, I used the MAC Mineralized Blush in the shade Warm Soul, and I just applied that a little bit onto her cheeks. So to highlight her face, I just used the Stila eyeshadow in the shade Kitten, and I just applied this to the high points of her face, meaning her cheekbones, the tip of her nose, the cupid's bow, and also a little bit onto her temples. To highlight the inner corners, I went in with the Coastal Suns eyeshadow in the shade Elven Gold, and I just, again, applied this to the inner corners to really brighten them. For her lips, I used the ColourPop Lippy Sticks in the shade Cookie, which is a really, really beautiful pinky nude brown, and I thought that that brown would just go really, really nicely with the browns that I used on her eyes. And that is the finished look. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed it. I know me and Courtney definitely had a lot of fun while filming it, and we both loved the look. So yeah, please like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more. I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys.